Sage, how you feeling?
I'm a bit sore. My ankles are sore the most because I think getting the stability in the slushy snow and mud was a huge challenge.
Yeah. All right. So good morning, Mont Blanc, everybody. It is now Wednesday, August 30th. We are now making progress into race week. We are joined by three great trail runners and content creators. This is going to be a long one, I think, between the four of us.
I think so.
But how fun is this? It's a sort of overcast morning, but the weather is finally breaking. Bad timing for Sage. We'll get to that in a second. TDS was rough weather, and we're joined by a heroic finisher, Sage Canaday, who's already been out for a shakeout run today. Introducing our esteemed guests here, of course, Billy Yang on the end.
What up?
Sage Canaday on the couch.
Thanks for having me on.
And of course, Sally McRae.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here, everybody.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be a great episode.
We have so much to talk about. Before we get to it, of course, big thank you to our sponsors, Hoka and Camelback. Hoka, of course, born here in France and one of the major sponsors of the UTMB World Series. We've got some Speed Goats and Stinson Sevens hanging out behind Sage. Sage, what shoes did you wear yesterday?
I wore the Speed Goat. It's a good choice. It didn't fall, so
yeah.
I'll take it.
That's probably going to be the number one used shoe throughout race week. So big thank you to Hoka for their support. Also, Camelback, check out our sick water bottles here. Freetrail. I already put my Trail Running Will Save the World sticker on it here. Sally's got some super high-tech beverage containers. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But, of course, Camelback really invented the whole hydration pack category. What did you use yesterday?
I used the Zephyr Pro, yesterday. So it's got... The great thing is you could fit all the gear, and you have to carry a lot of gear. It's like the UTMB list, base layer, jacket, which you need. But then the trekking pole quiver is real key because almost everyone's using poles out here. So being able to transition to the poles and the Camelback Zephyr Pro is great. Yeah,
awesome. And we're going to be giving away some of the Zephyr Pros for the best fantasy predictors throughout the race week. So make sure you're playing fantasy.freetrail.com. We've also got Tim Perry in the building here who's going to jump on at the very end of our show from Camelback to talk a little bit about the brand, the product, the UTMB partnership, the heroic athletes on the team, et cetera, et cetera. Launching into it, team, we got to start with a race report. Sage Canaday. TDS is basically a 100-mile race now.
Oh yeah, it's a little longer than when you did it, but still challenging with a lot of vertical. You're basically doing 30,000 feet of vertical, and 98.7 miles is what I got on the Strava.
So I'm gonna share my screen here for those who end up watching this on YouTube, and I'll turn the computer around so that we can all take a look at.
You still have it labeled Night Trail Run, by the way. It's the ultimate flex.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't. I just uploaded it this morning, so I didn't have time to change the title yet. My phone was dead last night, and I was like, I should sync it. Yeah,
you're allowed.
Yeah. So, Sage, according to your Strava here, your Koros, 97.83 miles. So basically 100. They should have just given you guys the extra 2.2 miles to round it out.
It is close enough. I think it's close enough.
28,000 feet of climbing. So maybe to start, just talk about the course reroute, how the communication evolved from UTMB organization and how you were feeling going into the race on Monday night.
Yeah, TDS, as you know, is a crazy race, totally different trails than UTMB or CCC or OCC. And you start in Courmayeur around midnight. We actually were delayed at the start because there's a little bit of a traffic jam in the Mont Blanc tunnel going over to Italy. So wanted to make sure everyone was there. Started around like 12:40 a.m. So it's already kind of cold, but we knew with the weather forecast it was going to probably snow, especially as you go up into the mountains. So it's a festive atmosphere in Courmayeur, a lot different from Chamonix, but still very festive. And pretty big race, over 1,500 runners. So, but because of the weather, because of the snow forecast, the precipitation, near freezing temperatures, they took out one of the climbs in the middle. You actually know the course probably better than I do, having done the race.
They've done that multiple times in the last 5 years. That's basically the weather alternative. So the year that I ran TDS in 2018, they also did the same course alteration. But that climb, when it's in the course, is 6,000 feet. And then off the backside of that climb is that hyper treacherous stretch of trail where, unfortunately, a runner perished last year. And so they no longer take any risks with that section. When there's precipitation and bad weather forecast, they change the course.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. But still on 2 or 3 of the mountain passes, I counted about 2 to 3 inches of snow, like slushy snow on the ground, and you're already slipping on the rocks because it's quite technical. But then with the snow and ice on the rock and then the mud in between, it was quite slippery out there. And then you're just dealing with running all night. Most people running 2 nights with the fog and the wind. I had to put on all my layers. I was taking out the windproof pants.
Really?
That's when you know you're doing business, is when you take out the waterproof pants.
Yeah.
But just to keep my legs warm. And a lot of guys, a lot of people started in long pants, which I very rarely do, even in Colorado.
Yeah. So backing up a step, those who follow you closely, which I'm sure is most people who will listen to this, know that, things have been up and down for you recently. You had some really serious health scare with pulmonary embolism, wasn't it? And you've sort of been battling back to health. And I think you're going to be releasing a film sort of about that journey in collaboration with Camelback at some point this week, maybe. Is it out already?
I think it'll be later on. Maybe in the spring or later in the year. But yeah, we've done some media stuff, kind of telling the story about the pulmonary embolism, and the apartment fire too in Boulder was part of it too. So I guess generally, how are you feeling physically, and how are you feeling after putting together a 98-mile race last night? Honestly, I'm pretty relieved and happy that I was able to finish a 100-miler, not totally blowing up, basically. I've had a long history of not doing well at these 100-mile races. So even before I got sick, even before I got the pulmonary embolism, I wasn't really finishing these things strong. And so yesterday was actually a more consistent performance for me. I definitely still have some scar tissue in my lungs and some breathing issues. And I was definitely had a lot of chest pain for probably the last 15 hours of the race. But
is that improving? Do you notice?
Not really. Mm-hmm. No, it's a lot of it's kind of permanent damage, I think. So, there's some breathing exercises I could do and maybe some things I could optimize, but no, it's been kind of an ongoing struggle. So I don't know how much I could actually get back. Well,
12th place yesterday was really great result, especially in tough conditions. And I noticed especially, I wanted you to comment on that section between Beaufort and Le Contamine, which is a critical big climb and descent late in the race between 100 and 120K-ish. You moved up 9 places from, I think it was 21st to 12th. Yeah, no, that was a key point in the race, and I knew it would be. I feel like that was like a 5,000-foot climb, as you know, and I think I got lucky. I think, it's a race of attrition, like a lot of these races, and there were probably some guys that just dropped out in front of me in the aid stations, but I did move up and pass some people, and, that's a really tough point in the race, but I was happy I stayed upright. Awesome, man. Well, congratulations on the great finish, and maybe tell us quickly about the shakeout run you did this morning. Oh, that was for another sponsor. We had a fun little group run with Compress Sport. Yeah. So I just hobbled around like a mile, but I was actually surprised once you loosen up, you actually could run. I could see why some people do run streaks now. It's not out of the question, but I don't think I'll be running anymore for the rest of the week, really.
That's more impressive than anything else. Yeah. Jeez. I thought you were joking and calling his race the shakeout run. You actually did a shakeout run.
Honestly, what was harder was getting up in the morning this early.
Let's see. Is it on Strava yet? Maybe I can share my screen and we can show the people
probably upload it.
Your sick pace. Yeah. All right, we'll upload it now.
It was like a half mile.
Yeah. Well, Sage, thanks so much for coming in and making the effort early after a 100-mile race effort. And I'm sure we'll spend a little bit more time on the race. I'd love to actually maybe go through some of the results with the whole panel here and get some comments. Sally, you were sort of planning to be on the start line at TDS.
I was very ambitious about the race calendar this year. I can't remember if I had committed to it before. I knew that Tahoe 200 and Bigfoot were going to be 17 days apart. I can't remember if it was that before or after. I thought, it's only 98 miles doing these 200s. But no, I think doing back-to-back 200s, want to be wise and take care of the body. So I realized very quickly after Bigfoot that TDS would not be a good idea. I could probably have gone and suffered through the mountain, but I was like, I'm done doing that for a few weeks because.
Yeah.
I'd like to do well. I'd like to run well, and you got to respect this mountain.
Yeah.
So.
You got to know when to say when.
Yeah.
It's probably for the best, especially given you still have another 240-mile race coming up in
6 weeks.
6 weeks or so. You've been here many times, though, and the three of us. Yeah.
All of us have.
Yeah.
Sage, what about you? How many years has it been for you?
Oh, been coming here most of the years in the last decade. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of us collectively, I mean, we all have so many great memories here. I mean, not just race. I think that this is definitely the event that you don't want to miss because you're like, all my friends are gathering in the valley in like one of the most beautiful places to run in our sport. And some of my...
It always starts with the Gaylord meetup. That's the point where I'm like, okay, the FOMO's building.
Yeah.
The FOMO's real.
So true.
It keeps metastasizing the whole Gaylord meetup. It's like... we've been part of that for, I don't know, almost a decade now, too. And it's become like our family tradition. And now with our baby, it's, expanding to the next generation, too.
But we were just talking about it. It's 9 day different from 2014, your first time, 2015, our first time.
Yeah.
Like, this place is absolutely insane now.
I want to talk about that 2015.
Well, I blame
year.
Billy's film. I always say this place has blown up because of your film. You've caused
It's honestly
FOMO
true.
all over the world. It's like every other person I meet, they're like, oh yeah, well, once I saw Billy's film, I'm like, I know.
Right.
Billy needs to stop making inspiring, beautiful films.
Come on,
And
Billy.
Just
That was such an epic
I
year,
blame
though.
that
Oh
for
my
Western
God.
states, all your Western
Do you
States
remember the
films.
naivete of the Nike Trail team at the time?
Yes.
We
The
made
best
so
team.
many. So we were staying at the chalet.
team.
Yeah, the film actually evolved. It was the original genesis of the film concept was about the team camaraderie because that team was. We had the Vargos, we had Sally, we had Varner, we had
Zach
Miller, Tim
Laney,
Tollefson.
Tollefson.
Such a great team.
It was an amazing team, so we're going to do it about that. It evolved into something else, but man, just trying to set up the guys for and Sally for the European style of racing, the equipment needed, the cell phone data. It was
That
comical.
first year,
So
it
many
was
trips back and
comical.
forth to the chalet. Oh, you need this much the Band-Aid. We had to go back into town and get that, and it was hilarious in hindsight. Like this was completely brand new to all of us.
And that year, Zach Miller won CCC. Tim
Yeah.
Tollefson was second.
Second, yeah.
And Dave Laney finished third at UTMB.
UTMB.
So
Sally
it
had a
was like
solid
these-
finish too.
Yeah, these three like sort of young up and coming Americans
Yeah.
performing hugely
Completely
on
green.
the world's biggest
Yeah.
stage. And,
It was awesome.
well documented. Billy, tell us about pacing Sally and crewing for Sally at Tahoe 200 because she was on my podcast a couple weeks ago and we talked about this. I bet you want to talk about your perspective of her officiating your wedding too, but let's start with the 200.
Well, people need to know, first and foremost, Billy and I have known each other for a very long time. So we have a sibling.
Yeah, but it's been a while since we've shared miles. Like Sally and I.
The pacing.
Yeah, Sally and I met initially at a 50-mile race, and here's this cheerful voice behind me, and I'm having a miserable first. What was it, like 10 miles? I'm like, Jesus
2010.
Christ! Like, get this girl off my back. And eventually, I stepped aside and let her pass. But Sally's whole mentality at the time was, I thought I had to talk to people instead of just blowing by them because that's just
I
her
knew nothing
mindset.
about the sport.
Yeah. So, I mean, she always had that cheerful mindset, even in pretty bleak times at Tahoe. I'll just say this, in all sincerity, Sally is, between the years, probably one of the toughest people I know. There was so many things that just was not sticking, her feet, she started having issues there. I mean, mainly it was, I think you were behind the 8 ball just going into it because you were sick a couple days before.
I was denying that I was sick though.
And couldn't get in calories. And so I was just like, Sally, how are you continuing? There were times when she was on her hands and knees, coughing and puking on the side of a trail. I was like, this is going to be fun.
And Billy's patting my back. So this is how close we are. He's patting my back. It's okay.
It's okay, yeah.
Like so many times. I'm like, I can't believe you're looking at this. It's disgusting.
No, but there was never any single point when she talked about, I don't know if I can finish this. it was, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to problem solve? How are we going to dig ourselves out of this? And dig she did. And so it was, I got the honor of getting front row seats for nearly 60 miles of pacing.
60 miles?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Going to get a few more.
Hey, aren't you
probably
getting
at
ready
Moab.
for Wasatch right now, or?
Oh man, that's a sensitive topic right now. We
Put you
can
on
come
the
back to
spot,
that. But
yeah.
We've had long discussions about it.
I was going to say
I'm saying
60
no.
miles is a good long training day for 100.
yeah, so was the TDS this past week. But yeah, just absolutely, unquestionably one of the toughest human beings I know.
Hell yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Billy was, I mean, and always has brought me out of a really dark.
Yeah.
rough
We're not going to do the shit at Moab though. Like at Moab, I want you to have a completely different experience. Because I'm not trudging through the wilderness with you, patting you on the back because something's going on, or fixing your feet.
Yeah, he took my shoes off and was wiping them down with wipes. I'm like, okay, you're between me puking at your feet and you cleaning my feet off. No, Billy's a great pacer and great friend, and we made some more good memories.
So let's talk about Bigfoot in a second, but Billy, I also want you to comment on Sally officiating your wedding. Because we talked about this on my podcast too. And
Yeah.
I think, it's in honor when you and Hillary approached Sally to ask if she would be willing to help you guys celebrate this union.
Yeah.
And you identify a special person to do that, right? Topher Gaylord actually officiated Harmony and I's wedding.
Topher
too.
was on the short
Yeah,
list
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about that.
Yeah, well, so I know Sally is not officially ordained. So we, a little backstory is that Hillary and I officially tied the knot on February 1st, not May 20th when we had the ceremony. And that was only because Hillary's Canadian and we wanted to get the paperwork going and do it the right way. And so we just wanted our actual wedding day to be a celebration of not only our love, but just the love in the community. And, we really, really wanted to open it up to as many people as possible, but the venue kind of limited us to a smaller, more intimate wedding. But anyway, yeah, so we just wanted somebody to help express that love. And between Hillary and I, it probably consisted of 80% trail runners there. And
Yes.
Yeah. My best man wasn't, and he was just in awe of all these people with single digit body fat and still plowing down food. It was just an amazing day of celebration, but we wanted somebody of Sally's, I guess, I don't know, just your sincerity, your way with words, your way of just capturing the moment and expressing everything about what we wanted to express about that day. And it was such a special day, man.
Awesome.
As you know, I mean, it's the best day in the world,
Absolutely.
unquestionably, especially when you have a bunch of people there and the Topher Gaylords of the world to help facilitate that.
And Sally made a comment about how her feet were still pretty messed up from...
They were so bad.
It was Cocodona. Yeah. Anyway, so Sally, tell us a little bit about Bigfoot, the second 100-miler that you did in a 2.5 week span. This was just after we had recorded our podcast, so this will bring things full circle.
It was. I mean, I think you and I chatted.
You were leaving
going to
the
Taylor
next day.
Swift.
Yeah.
So it was 2 days before I left.
Yeah.
And I was up till 2 a.m. I was
How was the show, by the way?
amazing. She's actually the endurance queen. To get on stage every single night and do what she does.
For 3 hours, isn't it?
I have so much respect for her. She's an incredible entertainer, but so talented too. It was a great show.
Did you bring earplugs?
Earplugs?
Yeah.
No.
A bunch of screaming.
Oh my gosh,
teenagers.
it was so good. Yeah, there was at one point where she just stood on stage, and for 10 minutes people cheered. Yeah. There was nothing. She just stood there. Yeah, that's LA. The LA crowd was
so
stoked.
fun. Yeah.
I flew out to Bigfoot two days later. I think I had shared with you because I got really sick at Tahoe, progressively sick. I was put on meds, and then the night before Bigfoot was my last dose of those meds.
Yeah.
So I relapsed pretty bad.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, when we talked, you were like, I'm going to go. I set this goal. I'm not really sure how it's going to play out, but I want to just give it a try. And if I need to pull out, I'll pull out. You didn't freaking pull out.
No.
You push through another 200.
I did. I think too that there's two parts of it. I had told Eddie before I left, I was like, listen, I'm going to sleep. And I did. I slept for like 4 hours in that race, which in my opinion is long.
In a 3-day stretch, that's not quite a lot of sleep.
That was, and then on top of that, I remember at Tahoe at one point being around a couple guys that were also doing the Triple Crown. And they're like, well, I guess we're hiking Bigfoot. I was like, oh yeah, you guys are hiking it? Then so am I. Like, it was like kind of like,
choose
well, you
strong.
guys are,
Choose strong.
you guys are, I can
Suckers.
too.
Yeah.
But you know, I had a few things that I knew would probably be getting progressively worse in the race. And I started to deal with some pretty gnarly nerve pain in my feet. Just kind of, I think around a mile, 100, 120. You know, I have feet that haven't had enough time to heal since Cocodona. And so, you know, there's more blisters on top of that precious ripped up baby skin. But then it just felt like every step someone was stabbing me through my toes and they were on fire. So
How do these?
A lot of pain running through that.
How do these 200s compare to like just a single 100?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like wrap my head around like doing like double.
Are you gonna
like,
join
what I
the
did
It sounds
yesterday.
like you're curious.
He's gonna join the dark
No,
side.
not personally.
Yeah.
It seems like there's so much more time for things to go
Yeah.
exponentially wrong. Or
Right.
you're talking about the nerve pain at 100 mile, 120 and stuff like that.
Yeah, I felt like I mean, years back I was like, I'll never do these things. They sound weird, and how much can you actually run?
Yeah.
They're not like hundreds.
Yeah.
You can't approach it that way. That's for sure.
It's like 50 is not like 100 either.
Yeah.
Right.
You just double the distance. It's a different adventure.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's definitely more mental and being able to work through every situation. You know, I don't want to necessarily call them problems, but it's like you're constantly encountering situations that are uncomfortable, and then you're pushing through sleep deprivation, which I feel like sleep deprivation is just a whole other category that needs its own attention.
Yeah.
Because
that makes
some
sense,
people
yeah.
go in that do great every day of their life on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. So you actually have a really great advantage.
That's probably one of those things like heat acclimatization and heat management
Yes.
that over time is going to become like optimized scientifically.
Yes.
Right? If you watch like the Tour de France now, they're wearing these ice vests to cool down
Yep.
while they're warming up. They'll stuff like ice or cooling elements into their jerseys, and they're riding so fast in the middle of the day through the middle of July when it's 30 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
And now like Western states too, like heat management has become so optimized. People are having less and less of an issue with it. It feels like times are getting faster and faster. I kind of feel like as 200s become more and more popular, the same process is going to evolve with sleep management too.
I totally agree. Yeah, because the three girls up front, as far as I know, Liza was second.
Yep.
And
Eliza LaPierre.
Yeah,
Yep.
Eliza's amazing.
Yeah, she is.
She came back. I mean, she finished like 20 hours ahead of me. That's how slow I was going.
Yeah.
But she came back as I was finishing to cheer me on. I'm just such an incredible woman. But like, she didn't sleep at all. And I think Mika was the first girl. I don't think she slept. I don't think that. So
No
hours?
sleep for how many hours?
So there's been talk. I've heard this through the 200-mile pipeline. If you can race under 70 hours, you don't need to sleep. Once you hit the 70-hour mark, like that's when you start to everything starts to diminish, and you start hallucinating, and you're
3
disillusioned,
nights.
and
Yeah.
But if you can get in under 70 hours, then there's.
This
I don't
is
know where that
craziness.
came from, but none
I
of
don't get 7
but
hours
they
per
all
night.
did.
I turn into an ordinary asshole.
Yeah.
So,
So all three of them were under
Jeez.
70 hours.
Yeah.
imagine being at a 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, wrap your mind around that. Okay, as long as we're going under 70 hours, guys, we're good. Like we can keep moving.
Before we move off this topic, I'd love to get back to, the UTMB stuff and your guys' experience here. But I just wanted to mention too, having spent a few days over in Courmayeur, the Tour de France is like,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's the one 200 miler that really makes me curious.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because Courmayeur is the start line of CCC. It's the start line of TDS. It's a major aid station at UTMB. But when you walk around town, you only see Tour de Gens promotions.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it feels like
So
they're super proud of that race that starts and finishes there, and it goes throughout the entire Aosta Valley. So I just think
I love
interesting.
that side of the mountain
Yeah.
too, by the way. I
Beautiful.
could live in Aosta.
Yeah.
I usually, the past few years that I raced UTMB, I always stay on the side of the mountain in one of the little ski towns because
Yeah.
it's so crazy
Yeah.
down here in the city.
Especially when you're Sally McRae.
So I hide out. I hide out, and it's so peaceful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
But you're right. I noticed that too. That there's just the Tour de Gens everywhere. Those posters are everywhere. I've always been fascinated with that race. I actually was talking to Jason Koop about it when I was at Leadville. I was like, "Tell me about this race," and it just sounds so
Big.
intense. Look at Billy laughing over here.
Yeah.
Because
Just
he wants
think back
to
to
do it
this
first.
video when Coop is completely melting down in the final miles of Tour de France, and I think he took a selfie video of himself,
Right.
like just breaking down emotionally.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's a huge accomplishment to
Yeah,
finish
big,
that. I
big,
hope
big,
that you
big.
do it one day, Dylan.
Maybe.
Ailsa Valley, the
Maybe.
mountains are absolutely stunning.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
How much climbing does that one have?
Some ridiculous amount.
100,000.
Whatever,
Believe it.
100,000 feet.
100,000?
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Ooh.
like whatever that is.
That's like all
30,000
you're doing.
meters or something.
It's like just climb straight up to the
I
sky.
can look it up here in a sec. Billy, tell us about the lap around the mountain you did. Was it with Run the Alps?
No, it wasn't Run the Alps. It was Vagabond Trails.
Cool.
And we organized this last year just purely because they were very open to a partnership, but B, this, as somebody who's been here now going on 7 years, still only seen really the last 50K or so through OCC. So this has been like hugely, if not 1A, 1B on my bucket list, adventure list, things to do. And we did it over the course of 6 days. It's funny, you guys were talking about the Italy side, and I was just talking to my friends who ran it with me, and just thinking about how we were kind of shortchanged on the Italy side. I could have done that section a lot longer if they extended it to the Aosta Valley, because I just love the culture there. I love the food. Just saying ciao, buongiorno, and just the whole culture there is amazing. But covered it over 6 days. We stayed from hotels to refuges, through like pretty primitive sleeping arrangements to like nicer hotels. It was just, we had really beautiful weather the first 3 days, and then we had some weather going up Bowman and finishing in town here. And on the last day, we just experienced the entire spectrum.
I was going to ask,
Yeah.
because when we arrived, it was crazy hot over
Yeah.
on the Italian side. And the day
Absolutely.
the day that we saw you out on the trail, it wasn't quite as hot, but it seemed like you probably got 4 seasons around the mountain, hot at the beginning and
Yeah.
maybe
And I
cold at the end.
that's exactly what I told my
Yeah.
group. You guys are experiencing the entire spectrum of what the mountains here can deliver, and just embrace it.
Yeah.
And then when we hunkered down at the top of Bovine, when it was windy, it was wet, we like basically kick open the door of the refuge, and we walk in, and there's a woman kneading dough and making dough from scratch. Basically, there's 4 guys playing cards at a table. It was just like, oh, this is what the culture is all about here. You adventure in the mountains, but people also value just like the downside of like really taking the time to drink your espresso, have a tart, and embrace that side of things
Yeah.
too. So I absolutely dug it.
Life slows down.
It certainly
Yeah.
does. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why it's always so fun to come here is, just experiencing, coming out of the hustle and bustle of, LA, San Francisco, Boulder, or not Boulder, excuse me. You're in a much quieter area now up there in Salida.
Yeah, but I lived in Boulder for 8 years, so I know how it is. Can't imagine LA or Bay Area. Well, Portland too, and you live there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to experience the mountain in that style one of these days. Just the multi-day hotel refugio cappuccino tour.
Was this
What's your
TMB?
rate? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Was this the TMB route or
Yeah,
the?
it's a Tour de Mont Blanc.
Oh, okay.
I will say I did have one episode. I mean, otherwise went fairly seamless. But man, because you're just consuming different things, I think I'm like mildly lactose intolerant. So there was a lot of things I probably shouldn't have consumed along the route. One of which was like 3 hard-boiled eggs at one point. This beautiful stop. I think it was either Elisabetta in the Italy side. 3 hard-boiled eggs, and at the top of this climb, I was just feeling nauseous and like dry heaved at this beautiful stop.
Yes, I saw a video of it.
Yeah, maybe I'll share that video with
Billy
you guys.
on his hands and knees, dry heaving, but in the back, it's the most beautiful mountain view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Maybe train
noticed-
your stomach in addition to training your legs before coming here.
I noticed you like had your GoPro out. Are you going to put together a little film?
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So we'll wait to see that. I guess we also have to quickly give us the story about the big surprise that you experienced. Yeah.
So I want to shout out my friends Kevin and Natalie who were part of the trip. I had no idea this was going on behind the scenes. I alluded to Hillary trying to get her green card process through, and we had anticipated at least a year and a half before the paperwork would go through with the government. So the notion of her coming to Europe was not even in the conversation at all. And she was, rightfully so, talking about kind of lamenting having FOMO, but it is what it is, right? So she was going to stay at home with Charlie, but 2 or 3 days before I left, I got a package in the mail, and it was her green card. Boom, showed up after 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah, in record time. Like, this is basically unprecedented. Even the law firm that we use, it's like, holy crap, this is amazing. So
The U.S. government's like, we got to secure this new recruit here.
Yeah.
To make sure that
we joked maybe they saw our engagement video and pulled
that
out the
was
heartstrings a little
the
bit.
beautiful engagement video.
Yeah. But anyway, so we entertained it sort of last minute, but the price of the flight and everything and dealing with Charlie. Plus, we have a lot of travel coming up. She's doing I Am Tough, we're going to Mammoth Trail Fest. We have a full schedule in September and October. But behind the scenes, our friend Kevin, who travels a ton for work, has accumulated like millions and millions of points and miles. And so I guess he saw how much she wanted to be here and how much I missed her, and basically paid her plane ticket off.
Wow. Shout out to Kevin.
Yeah, not only that,
Yeah.
but she flew here business class too.
Yes.
Yeah, so so she came here as we were finishing, as we were winding down day 6. She got into town, hiked up to La Flégère, where we were stationed, and we were kind of waiting for the rest of our crew to catch back up. And then Kevin, all of a sudden, he's like, hey, come outside. There's something going on. I was like, all right. I thought it might be one of our members in trouble. So I walk outside, and there's Hillary holding a GoPro in one hand, phone in the other hand. Surprise! And I'm sure maybe if you want to include it in this video portion of it, my face was just like white, jaw on the ground, like. And the only thing I could think of saying was, "What the F are you doing here?"
It's such a great video.
Yeah, I was floored.
expression.
I was like, "What? Am I in LA? What the hell's going on?" Yeah, so the greatest surprise in the world. I'm so glad she's here for the last week.
Super fun, man. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. So kind of bringing things back to UTMB. Sally, you've got 3 finishes in the big race?
Yeah, started it 5 times, finished 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you, any highlight memories from those 3 finishes?
Oh my gosh, 2019 was, I feel like,
Sorry,
man, I feel like that was like a rough year for a lot of the Americans. So there was like a few people, like friends that were over here that had dropped out of the race, and then there was teammates who had done other races. Billy was there at the time. Mario was coaching me,
Yep.
and I just remember they all came to the last aid station and they came to the finish line. Like there was like a group of like 12 or 15 of them. And I was like really overwhelmed with emotion by that, because it was like freezing cold, middle of the night.
Right.
And I feel like that will be a memory that always sticks out because it's so signature to our sport. You know, it's just, you work so hard to get around this mountain as fast as you can. And there's a lot of variables that make it difficult.
Yeah.
And I definitely had some ups and downs in that race, but overall had a pretty good race. And so to come through the finish line, and I remember they made like a tunnel for me too.
Yeah, a little human
like
arch.
in the last like few hundred like meters. And yeah, that was definitely one of my favorites. But another year, I think it was 2017. It was the year that there was like that. You may have been racing it this year when there's a really
17.
bad snowstorm. I mean, it was really bad.
I didn't get snowed on. I got super cold at the top of the Grand Col Ferret. Was that
Okay.
7? I know there was some
Maybe.
bad
I
weather.
did 17 too.
Yeah, so, and they had to
It was nothing
reroute.
compared to last night.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
They
that.
had- they had to
But it was
reroute.
cold. Yeah, it was. It was because of
So
the
we had
water.
snow, like we were in snow, and I remember all the girls. So I was with Magda, Casey, Amanda Basham. Like I think Amanda Basham at one point was like on a rock, like crying. Like everyone was
She
crying.
was talking about it here on the couch the other day.
Everyone
Yeah.
was crying. Everyone was like, I remember going to the aid station. I think Fernanda, her eyes had frozen over.
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't 17. Maybe it was a different year because it was where we were. All the women,
Yeah.
we were frozen in the snow. And I remember a volunteer coming up to me and saying, do you have any more layers? I'm like, I'm wearing all the required gear. Like every
My pack is
layer,
empty.
My pack is empty. And I still had to climb up this massive climb. And so that was a really challenging year. But at the same time, because of that, like a lot of us ran together and shared like these really hard miles and really good stories.
Yeah, Amanda
And-
shared. I'm pulling it up just to see what year it was, but Amanda shared that she was gonna drop out, and then Magda and Casey caught up
Yep.
to her, and they're like, "No, you're not
Yeah,
dropping
because
out."
they all ended up finishing together.
Yep.
They finished right ahead of me, and yeah, man, that was a pretty good year. And then 18, I didn't finish because I tried doing it right after Badwater, and I was
Yeah, it was
recovered.
2017.
yeah.
So that was the second night, I think, 2017, when it got bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah.
It definitely
was
snowed
during
that
the
year.
day.
It definitely snowed that year because there was snow going over in Italy, and then there were snowflakes on the Grand Col Ferret for sure in
Yeah.
Switzerland. So yeah,
So
it was cold.
Talk about your, because you've got one or two finishes at UTMB.
Well, 2017 was the only finish I did at UTMB. So I started it 3 times, finished once,
Yeah.
and my first one was 2015. I was actually bib number 1 that year. I guess Killian and Francois didn't show up, so
Yeah.
high ITRA score. And I was in the lead pack going over into Italy, and that was the year I tripped and fell and gashed my knee open.
Right.
And it was a long, embarrassing story. I basically had to get a helicopter rescue out of
I remember
Airtown.
you valiantly
But-
left Courmayeur.
I was gonna try to
You were, like,
finish.
gonna
I was
try
gonna try
and
to finish.
finish.
I got stitches in Courmayeur
yeah,
aid
I remember
station
that.
without like painkillers, and I had like 4 stitches in my knee, and they wrapped it up. And the problem wasn't the cut; it was more the swelling in the knee. I couldn't go downhill, so I climbed all the way out of Courmayeur, got to the very top, and I realized I couldn't even walk downhill.
Yeah.
And it was so bad, I was like, I can't walk back into town. And they're like, the only way out of this aid station is by a helicopter rescue. And I was like, how much is that going to cost? And now they make you buy insurance, but it was like 150 euro. It was,
Right.
it was a deal for a helicopter ride.
Helicopters are like Ubers here.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, you want to have insurance, but yeah, it's not like the $10,000 bill you might get getting rescued in Colorado or something in the mountains. So.
Oh, it'd be at least that if you had to flight for life off of some mountain pass in
Yeah,
the
so-
US. We were talking about my rabies situation where I had to get a cycle of rabies shots, and half of them I got in Europe, and the last couple I got in the US, and it cost me thousands in the US and almost nothing here in Europe. But we don't need to get into that. We don't need to get into that. Funny story while we're on the subject of bib number 1, because I think the audience will enjoy this. Jim Walmsley has been bib number 1, I think almost every year he's started here. And he's the top ranked runner again, based on the UTMB index score. And I can't remember when we were talking about this, but he was lamenting about how he felt like bib number 1 was a bad omen for him, that he always like felt, because he still hasn't raced to his potential here. He's got a couple solid finishes, 4th and 5th, but hasn't had a Jim Walmsley performance. And he feels like bib number 1 is a little bit of a curse. And in cycling, there's apparently like a tradition where like you take bib number 1 and turn it upside down to like, I don't know, somehow reverse the curse or something.
Right, yeah.
So for our audience, Jim was the one who enlightened me about this. So it'll be interesting to see if he flips his bib upside down on Friday or something
That's
like
cool,
that.
yeah.
Something like that.
So your
'Cause
pick?
He strikes
Have you
me as a little
revealed your
superstitious.
prediction?
I'm still working on it. I actually have fantasy.freetrail.com up on my computer right now, and I'm looking at the fields. I would, like I said in our opening show, I would riot in the streets if Jim or any American male was able to win this year, because obviously that's been a storyline of the UTMB for its entire existence, and we are due for a victory here.
Yes.
And Jim certainly provides a great opportunity to do it. But, and this may be fun for us to all discuss as a team here, like Jim obviously pulled out of the World Championship because he was dealing with a bit of an ankle injury and has been dark on Strava ever since. And in our circles, I'm sure you guys have all probably heard this too, like people thinking, he's still hurt. Like, is he even going to do UTMB and stuff? And then he drops the bomb on Instagram, like, not going to lie, I'm feeling really ready. Can't wait to race. And I was just like, yes.
Yeah, especially in the absence of the Francois and the Killians this field. Like, man, nothing will touch 2017 and how competitive that men's field was. Like, it was a venerable who's who from the Killian, Francois, Xavier, Debo, Tim. But I think if there was ever a year for Walmsley, Laney, Tim, Zach to do it, it would have to be this year.
He's ready. It'll never be easy, but he's ready.
It will never be easy. I mean, the Europeans, this is their home soil, and rightfully so. It's almost like a European taking the top spot at Western States. It's just contrasting styles, right?
Yeah.
But
Sage,
he's basically a European now.
Yeah.
You know, he's been living a few towns away, and I'd be surprised if he didn't figure it out this year.
Sage, what do you think makes the UTMB course especially so difficult to get right? You know, as somebody who's won a bunch of huge races and who's had maybe a frustrating run here at UTMB, 1 for 3, and your one finish was certainly not a Sage Canaday trademark race either.
Yeah, I was like 50th that year in 2017. But, you know, well, first of all, you want to be a 100-mile specialist. I think, you know, guys like Jim, you know, winning Western States, having course record there, obviously a totally different course. That's very runnable. It's not downhill. The steepness of the grade, like being able to run just bomb downhills, the sheer amount of vertical. But I'm sure you found like doing well at Hard Rock also kind of bodes well for doing well here. I mean, you were 7th here, second at Hard Rock. So I think Americans, men can get it right and do better, but the cards just haven't fallen in place. But it's a unique challenge with the steepness of the trails. Like you go to the U.S., it's all switchbacks, right? Even Colorado 14ers, you're almost up too high in the Colorado 14ers, and there's too many switchbacks. It's not steep enough. Here, the trails just go straight up and straight down. So I think that's part of it.
I think the influx of elites embracing the poles. And that was something that not too long ago, I mean, Debo and I have been in the sport for a while. You guys have too. It was almost laughed at. We would have little names like cheater sticks, wizard sticks, and it really wasn't embraced until I think like maybe a half a dozen years ago, when I think they all realized like poles it's not negotiable. It's a necessity.
It's so funny how quickly the gear has evolved and advanced. I remember I was thinking the exact same thing because Jamil sort of reposted a video that he had made, I think, at the 2014 Hard Rock, when it was like Sebastian Chengyo and Joe Grant and Dakota Jones and other, you know, sort of name brand athletes of our generation. And Dakota's like still running with 2 handheld water bottles on the Hard Rock course, you know? And it's like now you'd be wearing this super lightweight, almost piece of apparel as a pack with these carbon poles. And it makes such a big difference. And you're right. Like now it's ubiquitous across the professional ranks of both the men's and women's races.
I also think we're also embracing the off season and pole use in, as you've adopted recently, backcountry skiing and skimo. This is something that the Europeans are just a lot more proficient at because they do it year round. And this is something that's still relatively new, I think, to the U.S. top tier athletes.
Mm-hmm. I think another detail that sometimes goes overlooked is the 6 p.m. start. And so you have some athletes that maybe if it's their first time, they'll come in on Tuesday and then the jet lag hits and then they're trying to bounce back from that. And then it's like, okay, now we're racing at night. I have listened to so many athletes say, man, I was just tired.
Yeah.
I got so tired halfway into that race. Like I was fit coming in, but I don't know. I was foggy. I couldn't get that together. And it is the European racing is very different from the United States. I think also the seriousness of it. I mean, I all week I feel like people are going on shakeout runs, but it feels like they're racing a 5K.
Yeah.
Like people are kitted out. They're wearing their outfits and their packs, and it's like everyone just looks so serious. And then you walk up to the start line, and they have this music playing that sounds like you're going to war. And it's just like you have a whole bunch of variables that a lot of athletes have never dealt with. Like they're not used to having thousands of people in the forest at midnight cheering them as they go up a climb, or the way that we start out at the beginning of this race can really stress runners out. Like if you're not getting out of Chamonix, out of the city, running at a 6 minute pace, at a 6 minute pace for the first couple miles, it's really stressful. And so I think those things start to compound. If you've never raced internationally, if you don't understand kind of how European racing goes, the pressure, the seriousness, the crowds, the climbs are very different, but having these night starts and it can compound.
It's a speed trap course too.
Yes.
So maybe we could talk about this too, just the way the course sets up. And I didn't plan that we would go through all this right here, but this is fun. Yeah. So those first 5 miles out of Chamonix to Les Houches, super fast. The lead men are going
Have you ever looked
sub
at your
6.
splits?
I could pull it up probably. But Pau Capel was here yesterday. He was like, I know my split to Les Houches, 31 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's 550 pace or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
everyone is running so fast.
But even so from the start to Les Contamines, which is 30K, about 19 miles, you just have the one big climb from Les Houches to Saint-Gervais. Mm-hmm. So those first 20 miles, one big climb. So effectively, you got 27,000 feet of climbing packed into the last 80 miles of the course. And especially that last 50K is especially tough.
Gosh, yeah.
But to your point, everybody here is so fit, so primed, so eager to arrive on the international trail running map with a solid, satisfying performance here at UTMB. That's why at Champ-Lac with 50K to go, mile 75 or so, you just see explosion after explosion after explosion.
That's where I dropped out one year was there. It's like you have 25 miles left and it's like, I can't take another step.
I was actually thinking about this. If there was any data out there, if anybody's listening who can crunch some numbers to see what percentage of the overall drops happen at Champ-Lac. Because I would guess it's probably the majority.
Courmayeur too. I feel like Courmayeur is the first big one.
Yeah, and you can just get back through the tunnel.
Yeah, it's the big, a lot of people walk into Courmayeur looking like death because that's also the sun is up. Usually that's the start of the second day for most of the athletes. And then you leave Courmayeur to some really big climbing as you're climbing into Switzerland. I mean, it just doesn't stop. I can't think of a lot of races back in the United States that are similar to this.
Yeah. But because it's so fast early, if you miscalculate those first 20, man, you really pay for it.
You're right. The first 30K, people go very fast that first 30K, and you can essentially lose a lot of your race and stress out your body just in that first.
I remember when I did it in 2017, you hike up the first climb to the Bellevue, I think is what it's called. And then it's such a steep drop down into Saint-Gervais, on a grassy
It's a ski slope. It's like a blue run. It's a blue run ski slope. It's -40 degrees.
Yeah.
I think
then,
like
and then there's
3 dozen.
pavement going into Saint Gervais too. So you're on these paved
Yeah.
roads,
But people
and people run.
bomb.
They'll go sub 6.
They
Some of the lead
bomb that
guys,
thing.
and I was like feeling my quads already. And like you shouldn't,
Yeah.
you don't want to feel your quads
There's
on this
people
first
running
downhill.
that backwards too.
Right.
You see people going down that backwards?
No, but I just remember having 2 dozen Europeans just absolutely scream past me, like rolling the windows down, going 5-minute pace. And I'm like, oh my God.
And then you passed them back. I bet.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like the increased internationalization of it. Like since we've all been coming here, what was your first time at UTMB?
That was 2015.
2015.
I think all of us was 2015.
I was
You were 14.
2013.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. I broke my ankle at the top of the Brabant that year. Yeah, first run arriving. And
Wait, on a training run.
training run.
No
So I ended up
way.
not starting, but I got to jump in with Joe Grant and Anna Frost to crew for Anton that year, who
Yeah.
ended up dropping out at Trient later in the day. But it was so amazing to have a front row seat to that race that day. And it was the year that Rory Bozio broke the course record.
Such an amazing
Finished 7th
performance.
overall.
Yeah.
Obviously, Courtney broke it again 2 years ago. But just like how much it's even changed and grown and evolved since then. Because that was like really the early days. It was like still mostly French, like a couple Spaniards like Miguel Harras and Killian and stuff. Yeah. And then there was like a handful of Americans. Now it's like the best runners from every country, Eastern Europe, Asia, China, South America, everywhere are here now. And it's just like become this, I mean, it's the default world championship.
Yeah, and Asia in particular, trail running has exploded in the past 5-10 years.
A lot of amazing runners coming out of Asia. I think too, because our sport, we're not in the Olympics. And I feel like even the world championship stuff isn't like the 100K like flat. Aren't a lot of the world championship ultra distances? They're pretty
they only
flat,
have the
aren't they?
IAU Worlds, which is a
Yeah.
road race. You've been on that team.
Yeah.
I've
haven't you?
never been on that team,
I
but
thought
yeah, they
you
have the road 100K, and then this year I guess they did have the trail.
But it's short.
It wasn't 100K. It was like 80K.
It was 80K.
Yeah, the world champs.
There
but
there
it's
isn't like
been,
a big 100.
Yeah, they've kind of been. It's hard who's on the team.
Or competition. Okay, that's what it's too. It's like you don't always get like the best in the country to go, like everyone gather for that race. But I feel like here, I don't even know what is it, like 100 countries are represented.
I think it's
here?
120.
120?
Keith told us the other day. Let's
It's
see if we can pull it
incredible.
up. I have the program on my computer. I'll see if I can get it.
And-
But I
and
think it's
the-
like 118 countries. Are here.
Okay, so we were looking at 118 countries, and then now you're looking at multiple distances, which for a while it was only UTMB that was the most competitive race. I mean, that was always like all eyes on UTMB, but now I feel like all of the distances are very deep. They have more respect, which I think is so important for our sport, is like you do not have to be a respected athlete and do 100 miles. Like,
Totally.
I mean, you don't have to do 100 miles to be a respected athlete. Like if you're a short distance specialist, you're on these trails. Running 50K hard is very challenging.
Which is happening tomorrow. We'll get around
Yes.
to talking about OCC.
Yeah. But I love now that all the distances are more respected. It's not just all eyes on UTMB, and now all of the distances are very deep with competition. That's really good.
That reminds me of something that came into my head as you were talking earlier about how people used to arrive like on Tuesday of race week and have a hard time figuring out the sleep. Now it seems like a lot of the pros are here for a month. At
You have
Yes.
to,
If
at
not-
least.
Yeah.
if not the whole summer, which makes me think, and maybe Billy, you want to comment on this, the brands must be freaking spending tons of money just
Yeah.
for accommodations to get their athletes out here because everybody is invested in performing well on this stage, whether it's the big race, UTMB, OCC, which happens tomorrow, CCC, one of the most competitive races in the world
Yes.
also.
Yes.
It's just so fun. It's what
It
makes
really
this
is.
race so cool. Billy, anything you want to add, especially on the brand front? I know that's something you pay attention to.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I just think that, to your point, it is, I think some of the past dealings and lessons some of these athletes have learned is coming here thinking 2 weeks is plenty of time and then burning the candle out because the stoke is super high. You arrive in Chamonix Valley and you're like, well, I still have time to explore this area and that area. And I think they come into the race just burnt and just being so stoked about arriving here. So I do think that it is unquestionably, like I saw Tim Tollefson, David Laney training together, putting in big mileage. Amanda Basham has been out here for a while. Like, you have to become reacquainted with the steepness, the European culture, the lifestyle, the weather conditions, and just, busting out the poles. And yeah, it's unquestionably a necessity to get out here at least a month out if you want to have success out here.
I think on the brand side of things, what I always appreciated, because I started coming out here in 2015, it's one of the few races during the year, I think worldwide, where brands really do bring their team out. And brands don't, it isn't just the team, like they're bringing their staff out to support the team.
Totally.
So they're trying to discover, how can we serve our athletes better? Like, what is the gear that you need? And in some ways, they're kind of like, athletes are able to spend more time with their teammates, because, in trail running, athletes live kind of all over the place. Whereas you look at more road running, where athletes will all train in the same spot. They'll have like one coach, but it isn't like that in trail running. So UTMB is really like a coming together. So teams are coming together. Teammates are getting to know each other. They're really making these memories. And I feel like when brands come and they invest and they see what this sport is all about, because, not everyone on a team and a brand is a trail runner or even really understand the sport, but they come into Chamonix Valley and they're like, oh my gosh. And they're then all convinced and they're excited. Yep. And I feel like what I've seen over the years is that brands are more invested. Yeah. They have more belief in the sport. They have more belief in the athletes, and they are giving them their athletes more support. So it is exciting, I think, on both sides, both for the brand and the athletes, that when you have the opportunity to race at UTMB, you kind of feel like this is a highlight of my entire career.
Yeah. Do you know Andrew Bumbelow from Nike?
The name sounds familiar.
I used to race against him, well, behind him.
So
Yeah,
this is a good story on your point. He's not here this year, but he was at Canyons in April.
Okay.
And one of his colleagues at Nike. So Andrew Bumbelow raced for the Bowman Track Club for several years, 210 marathoner, retired a couple of years ago, now works in innovation for Nike in footwear. So eventually you'll meet him if you haven't already. Anyway, at Canyons, one of his colleagues was doing the 100-miler, and he paced him the last 30 miles through the night. And we saw him at the finish line, and Bumby, as we call him, just has this twinkle in his eye of like, I finally get it. Yes. Trail running will save the world. And now he's signed up for our brand new race, the Big Alta, in February.
Serious?
Yeah,
Dude,
so he's gonna run a 50K.
It's cool seeing Molly Seidel out here too. I know she's dating a ultra runner now, and Des Linden last year, and it's just like opening up this entire new world to them too. Like,
I had one other thing I wanted to say on like American runners coming out here and going big. Topher Gaylor was here yesterday, who's of course been here for all 20 years of the UTMB. And he called it ODing. Like, people come out here and overdose, basically.
So true.
And it reminds me, and you guys may have good insight on this too, a couple years ago, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago at this point, when Zach Miller was here, and he did 4 laps around the mountain in training in like a couple weeks.
Month? Yeah.
And I've heard, I don't know this for sure, but that he intentionally is arriving late this year because he feels like he can't necessarily contain himself when he's in Chamonix. Yeah. So he's done the mistake of going way too overboard, doing 4 laps, like sleeping out on the passes, and now sort of arriving later. And let's see if Zach Miller can thread the needle here.
He arrived on Friday. I was at the airport with him.
Okay, good. Awesome.
So yeah, he came in a week before only. So no lap this time before the race.
Sage, anything you want to add on that, of just like, the mix of travel and containing ourselves and managing all the sponsor events and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool. It brings the community together, and like you said, the sponsors bring in their employees, and so you get this meeting of like seeing all your teammates on, if it's Camelback or Hoka, and people, the international team, you get to see the European side, right? So you're meeting all these cool people and people that have helped support you, and then you could talk product, showcase product, and then just the global scene. It's just I think the scale of these races, because they're so big, like people forget, you go to Western States or Hard Rock and you have a couple hundred people, or your 200s. I'm sure it's not a huge crowd of people wanting to do 200 miles. But you come here and it's, what is it, almost 3,000 people
It's
Just for the one race?
doing
it's
UTMB. Doing
11,000
UTMB.
total runners.
Yeah, it's
11,000
11,000 total runners between all the races.
Yeah.
But even like TDS, like there's 1,500 people starting all at once. Like
Yeah.
it's a mad rush, mad scene. And, you know, there's so many people. There's so
I
much
think
depth.
I think Leadville's the biggest 100-mile in the United States. Is there any other race that has 1,100
It's like 800.
runners?
Yeah, 800 athletes.
I've got
Total line.
TDS up right now, and it shows 266 finishers of 649 starters. So there's still, and I guess
1,600.
600.
I think,
Sorry.
I think there's
1,600,
there's
sorry.
600 plus drops.
Yeah, sorry.
so
I
far,
don't know
yeah.
if I must have misspoken. 1,650 starters, 620 DNFs, only 266
Wow.
finishers. So there's
Sage, you should be so proud of yourself.
Yeah, we'll see
You're
what the
top
ending
12.
percentage is because it's a 48-hour cutoff for this race.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I had a feeling with the weather and
Yeah.
just the difficulty of that
I wonder
course.
how that
did it-
compares to years past.
Yeah.
It's got to
That's
be around
insane.
50% at least.
But what you did out there, Sage, I wanted to comment earlier when you were talking about how you have pain breathing, pain in your chest. These climbs get your heart rate going like immediately.
Oh, yeah, especially with poles. Yeah.
With poles, with everything. And I think that for people listening, you know, as athletes, we really fear that type of discomfort. And for many of us, we'd be so alarmed that we're like, yeah, I'm not going to keep moving forward. But you're kind of embracing that as like, this is how it's going to be if I still want to compete. Like, I'm always going to have to deal with this. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's always dealing with something, but yeah, you have the typical leg pain too. Like your calves are burning in the first 10
Right.
miles, and whether it's that or dealing with nutrition issues,
Yeah.
it's
But I
it's
feel
a
like
struggle.
breathing is kind of that's like next level.
Yeah.
Are you afraid when you're out there? Is that like is there like a tipping point for you? Because for the course that you just did and you finish 12th, it's phenomenal. I don't think, unless you have, for those of you listening, if you have been over here and been on the course and you understand what Sage did, but I think everything you were dealing with in the race you put together, I applaud you for that.
yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like 6 or 7 hours is always a tipping point. I don't know if it's like inflammation or
And how many hours
something.
did you run?
Is just over 22
Yeah,
for the finishing
It's
time.
a solid time.
Only two guys.
Yeah.
Only two guys cracked 20 hours.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to go through the results here just for our viewers here, and we're already going over an hour here, so we can start talking about. I want to wrap up TDS.
Did you think we were going to go under an
No,
hour?
no, I know. I just want to be. I want to be cognizant of all you guys' time. I'm sure we've all got things to do today, but anyway, yeah. Just to wrap things up, Christian Meyer won the men's race, and for those who don't know Christian, we met him last October. He's a Canadian guy, lives in Girona, Spain. Former pro cyclist, really interesting dude. He owns a couple cafes in Girona that are sort of like sporting oriented. They're cult favorite sort of coffee stops for the cycling and running communities there. He also just opened a really cool specialty run store in downtown Girona. And if you've never been there, it's like the coolest city in Europe, I feel like. Just sporting culture, deep to the roots. It's where Americans, like, you know, some of the former U.S. Postal team, you know, obviously we don't need to go into that, but started training there as cyclists. And now it's just like created this amazing cycling and running culture. Anyway, Christian is really one of the leaders of that sporting community. So I just wanted to give him a big shout out here on the show for winning TDS, because he sort of flies under the radar. Again, a Canadian guy living in Europe. Evidently the first Canadian ever to win a race here as part of UTMB.
That's awesome.
Going through just maybe the top 5 in both the men's and women's races. Feel free to stop me if you guys have any sort of intel on some of these guys, because a lot of them are newer to me. Second place in the men's race was Simon Waslund from Sweden. Third was Yannick Noel from France. Fourth was Jean-Marie Thevnard, little known fact, younger brother of Xavier
I was just
Thevnard.
going to ask, 'cause that's amazing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So fourth place for him, and then fifth place was Christopher Clemente from Spain. So
What was the first
Also a
place
Hoka
finishing
athlete.
time?
19 hours, 36 minutes. Solid run. I
Sub
actually got to see
24
him.
on this
I got
is
to see him coming
really
into
great.
town last night too.
Okay.
It was awesome. And we're going to see if we can get Christian to come in here for a little post-race interview too.
That's great.
So just doing the women top 5, female top 5 here too. Marilyn Nakash won 23 hours, 37 minutes. Really solid time from her. She's a very solid French runner, sort of always top 3, top 5 at a lot of these big races like UTMB, CCC, Trans-Gran Canaria, etc. Second place was Fiona Port, also from France. Third place, Flavie Bernil from France. So top 3, all French women. Fourth place, Paulina Krauzak from Poland. And fifth place, Magali Mellon, also from France, for the top 5 women from France.
They all finished pretty close to each
Oh,
other.
yeah, good point. So Marilyn looks like she won by 30 minutes, 31 minutes.
Solid.
Yeah, so the top 5 women were separated by an hour and 40.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty solid.
Yeah, it's a solid one.
Let's look ahead towards OCC before we start winding down here. Has anybody run OCC? You did. Last year?
Last year, yeah, and in 2016.
12,000 feet of climbing?
Yeah, big.
Yeah,
I've actually
that's
got
solid.
I've got the course profile
Do
up
we have
here.
a 50K in the United States stage that you know of that has that much? I mean,
Speed Goat is
Speed Goat's
close.
like
The Rut, maybe 11 only, I guess, on those, but totally different.
yeah. Which one is 11?
Both the Speed Goat and the Rut are
They're
similar.
around that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. I thought
Yeah.
Speed Goat was 8.
At altitude too.
Yeah, but
I
it's
think OCC
different.
might run a little bit longer. I think it's closer
Oh, it's
to
55K.
like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
it's
55K.
55K.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
That does make a difference.
Here's an important piece of information. So, Billy, you ran last year?
Yes.
Yeah, so the course is actually 2.5 miles shorter. I'm sharing my screen here just so we can plug this into the video after we're done here. So this is the GPX file for the 2023 route. Comes to 32 miles almost on the dot, 10,800 feet of climbing.
Oh.
And then I've also got Danny Moreno's Strava file up here too from last year. And the course measured 35 miles, just under 35 miles, also with 10,800.
She did that in 6 hours.
6:17 total time for Danny for third place last year. Yeah, fast.
Crusher.
So same amount of vertical, 3 miles shorter. I'm speculating that means 30 minutes faster for the women this year. It was actually MK Sullivan who alerted me to the fact that the course had been changed a little bit. So just want to flag that for our viewers.
What
But
section did they eliminate?
I think it's up at Col de Balme, but I haven't looked closely enough to know for sure.
Okay. I would have appreciated that last year.
It was pretty
That is
hot
nice.
last year
It's more
too, right?
True to a 50K though.
Yeah, so it's almost a true 50K.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit longer.
That is nice, but solid. I mean, if you doing UTMB, when you get to those last 3 climbs, they are soul crushing. You're just like, you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, those are big climbs.
Yeah, they're-
and it gets
they're-
hot, and it gets hot too, because
Yeah.
usually you're going into that second day, or a lot of people are, and the sun's beating down on you there. It could be really hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did OCC in 2015 that year, I think, that we were just talking about with the Nike Trail boys and girls, I should say. And yeah, tough 50K. Absolute butt kicker. And especially the level has really gone up
Yes.
this year.
Yeah.
Actually, this may be a good thing for you to comment on, Sally, because Amanda Basham was here the other day with Justin, and we were talking about parenthood and stuff. And Amanda was saying, like, you know, when I was having my kids, the level of the sport went up. And so coming back postpartum, trying to return to the top level, it's like, I don't need to get back to where I was, but I need to get even better to compete. And, you know, I was bringing that up because OCC now, like we've talked about with UTMB, CCC, I mean, world championship level 50K race. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're just seeing in the sport across the board is we are seeing a wider range of age group that are being interested in the sport. So I know I personally get contacted by college kids that reach out and say, how can I do this professionally? How do I get started and like actually make a career out of this, which really excites me. Because when I started the sport back in 2009, 2010, you know, it was rare that you met young 20-somethings in a race. And so if we're getting kids that were running in college or they're running at the elite level on the road And now they're starting to funnel into the sport, and they're starting at those shorter distance, typically trying to keep that top speed and then kind of working toward the longer distances. It really is changing the face of the sport. It's no surprise that every year course records are dropping and we're seeing records breaking. And I think it helps the sport. It helps people understand. And I've talked about this in the past, even in posts on my social media, but I really think the athletes need to understand that you do not need to have a road or track background to be a good trail runner. It is a sport in itself that needs to be respected. So it isn't that if you're a 100-mile specialist and someone asks you, well, what's your road marathon time? That's like asking Usain Bolt what his 5K time is.
Yeah.
Like, he's a sprinter. Like, that's his distance. Respect it.
It's like asking what his jump shot's like, even.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that trail deserves that. I think that it shouldn't be, oh, when I'm older, I'm going to go and trail run. Or when my career is over on the road, I'm going to go and trail run. No, there are so many different variables that you need to work through in order to be great at trail running. It isn't just about running fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so many things that you need to do well. And so I love seeing the youth come into this sport and nail it.
Yeah.
And I think it's only going to help the sport grow. It's going to help our elite and pro level athletes that really want to make a career out of it. You know, we're seeing more brands taking that seriously and signing younger athletes. And so, yeah, the level of competition, it's risen quite a bit. Times are faster. The fields are deeper, and really this it's really just legitimizing.
We're seeing some East Africans in the sport too,
Yep.
like coming in and
Sierras and all.
Yeah, Sierras and all.
It's like 5 out of the 6 podium positions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The only non-African at Sierras and all on the podium was Sophia Lockley, who won, who's, I mean, going to be world dominator for years and years. So OCC's tomorrow. It's going to be freaking shred fest.
Yes.
I mean, it's good running weather. I've got the weather
beautiful.
up here. I think they're expecting a high of like 62 in the valley tomorrow.
So bad for Sage.
Yeah.
I prefer hot and dry.
It's like,
I wasn't ready for snow yet. I mean, I come from Colorado. It felt like ski season already. I was just like skiing down the mountain.
29 and snowing at the top of the
Because
passes.
it's been a hot summer in Colorado.
Right.
We were doing soft rock a couple weeks ago.
Well, it was
Dude,
hot
it's been a
here last
50
week.
degree
Yeah,
switch in
yeah.
temperature
just
here.
a few days ago.
just the difference of a couple of days.
Yeah,
So
that's mountains for you.
I just want to, I've got the sort of race preview up on my computer, so I'm going to just tick through a few names, and you guys can pause me if there's any color you want to add on some of these athletes, because I'm sure you guys follow it just as closely. But, you know, on the subject of it being a shred fest, I think throughout the course of the entire week, one of the things our listeners should probably keep their eye out for, we've been talking about how, you know, it can be a speed trap. People go out hard. You know, attrition happens, especially in the longer distance events. But you also need to go out hard if you're going to win the race here now.
Yeah.
It's evolved to that point where if you don't go out with the lead pack, you're almost certainly not going to win. And so if you want to win, you got to take a big risk. And on the other hand, you'll see a lot of people who execute really smart, savvy, conservative early strategies and are able to pull through for sweet podium positions, but likely not win. Anyway, OCC tomorrow. Let's go through a few of the names here. Stian Angermund is who I'm looking at for the men's race. 2-time world champion, Norwegian guy. Do you know Stian? Sage?
Oh, yeah, we've gone a couple Golden Trail series. He comes from that side, so he's used to the 50K distance. He doesn't, I don't think he's not a skimo guy, but yeah, Norway. Amazing climber. He's one of the best climbers in the world. Came from like vertical K background even. But yeah, he's one of those guys that is one to watch.
Yeah, he won 2 years ago here. I think he did have the course record and it was subsequently broken by Jonathan Albin in that super fast battle that he had with Robbie Simpson. Robbie Simpson's back. Do you know him?
Oh, yeah. He's 215 marathoner, Sierras and all type of guy.
Yeah.
Young Frau Marathon. He's done well there.
10 years in a row, he was a top 10 guy at Sierras and all. So,
Yes.
Wow.
And if people don't know Sierras and all, it's probably one of the most iconic sub-ultra distance mountain running races in the world.
Very
Was there
competitive.
60th anniversary this year?
50th. Because it was the same as Western.
Yeah. So like that's
Do you know the stats on that?
7,000 feet of climbing in about 20 miles.
Yeah.
And the
Starts
the
out
7,000
with a double VK basically.
And it's
Brutal.
It's fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go out. You'll be splitting. I think right after it levels out, you got to be able to run 5 minute mile. Like I would run like a 5:20. Killian's going like 5 flat on that mile.
That's why they say it's like
crazy.
a really difficult course to get right because it doesn't suit anybody. You know, the road marathoners have the advantage on the flatter stretch, but then you got to be a great climber to survive that double VK. Anyway, a few more of the names here. Bart from Poland, whose last name I won't even attempt to pronounce, but he won the Golden Trail World Series in 2022. I'm sorry, 2020 in the heart of the pandemic, but beat Jim Walmsley. It was when they did the 5-day stage race on the Azores out in the Atlantic Ocean. He's one of the favorites. Francesco Pupi from Italy, Loic Robert from France, Martin Anthementen from Switzerland. Daniel Ozon's a great VK style guy from Spain. So a lot of crazy international depth on the men's side. For the Americans, we got our boy Cole Watson in the mix there. Jeshurun Small, too. He had a great 50K run against Hayden Hawks at Canyons in April, where I think pushed him to the final climb, was only a couple minutes behind Hayden in a 50K. So young kid from like Gunnison, Colorado or something. So he'll be fun
he
to
runs
watch.
the Western State, Colorado, and Gunnison has a trail running program at the college.
Really?
Because my former Brooks teammate, Josh Eberly, runs it, and he gets the kids involved in this club.
I love it.
So they're already doing trail races, 50Ks usually, or shorter, in college as undergrad. So that's where he came from, yeah.
So cool.
Sweet. So just moving over to the women here, I think the main takeaway for me is just like the American depth. The American women are really showing up at OCC here. So I'm just going to list some names and then have you guys comment on it. So just on the American side first, Katie Scheid needs no introduction.
Yeah, amazing.
UTMB champ, second place at Western States. Allie Mack, Jen Lichter, Danny Moreno, Rachel Drake.
Rachel's my teammate. I have to give a big shout out to
Yep.
her. She is gritty.
Yep.
Incredible climber.
Then we've got MK Sullivan, Heather Jackson,
Yes, Heather.
and then a little further down, Natalie Sandoval, Peyton Thomas, Tessa Chesser. Any comments on the American women?
I mean, Allie Mack's a character. So Hoka teammate, amazing climber. I mean, she came from, doing shorter climbs like the Pikes Peak Ascent, obviously won there. But then moving up to like Pikes Peak Marathon
And world champs team, isn't she? Been
world,
part
tons
several
of world
champion?
Yeah, she won
like
several
the shorter.
short and like medium distance.
Yeah.
I think
She was
she's
gold medal in the vertical and bronze medal in the up down.
Yeah,
last
Phenomenal
year.
athlete.
and
yeah.
she's been like base jumping or I don't even know that she does like skydiving in the US, but then she has this parachute, like a Hoka parachute. If you check out her social, she got crazy videos, really great character, but she's definitely one to watch because she's not only a great climber, but she's an amazing technical downhill runner too. So she could just fly. Like you think about this last descent down into Chamonix and the tree roots and you're just like dancing, and she's amazingly fast up and down.
She was disappointed about her Worlds performance this year in June, but then she showed up a week later at Broken Arrow and absolutely dominated the 23K. So I hope Allie Mack is fit. Billy, any comments on the American side?
No, I'm my head spinning at all the names that you threw out there. I'm glad we're representing, but yeah, to Sage's point, Allie Mack, when she's on her game, as we saw at Broken Arrow, she can dominate, and a lot of power to weight ratio in that small package. But man, she's going to be my pick on that start line.
Yeah.
I think that I would love to see an American sweep. That'd be so incredible.
amazing.
I think those women, and a lot of them, they know each other. It would be really cool to see. And I've always felt this about UTMB. Like we come into race, we all run for different brands, we all live in different areas, but I always felt like at UTMB, like the Americans are like, we're here representing America and would work together.
Yeah.
And I feel like, with a race like this with 3 big climbs, you don't necessarily need to be pushing hard as first place right from the start, but stay with that front pack.
Yeah.
And if these girls could work together and then see what they got at that last climb.
Sweet.
I mean, that's where it comes. It's the last climb in that descent. Stuff starts changing.
Yep.
Who's holding on and who's saved a little bit, who's running it smart. Because you're right, you need to go out in the front pack, but you don't need to stress yourself and be first place.
Yeah.
Be so stressed about being first or second place, just stay with that front pack and be smart. But I think working together, because how long are you in that lactic?
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, we went up to Cafe La Floria, which is the little cafe sort of a third of the way up the final descent into town. And this was the year that Ruth Croft won on the women's side, I remember, and Stian won on the men's side. And it was just crazy to see just the level of freaking output they're putting down 30 miles into the OCC.
Ruth is so fun to watch.
She's in UTMB this year. She's won OCC and CCC.
Yeah.
She'll be Courtney's biggest competition, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to list a couple more names. Our cameras are going to die here soon, so I want to bring Tim up for a quick conversation too. So Tim, start making your way over here. I'm going to list a couple more names. On the women's side here at OCC. Tomorrow, Mao Yao, who's the former course record holder at CCC.
She's great.
From China. Nuria Jill from Spain. Caitlin Fielder from New Zealand. She lives in Girona. Great athlete, also great character. Tony McCann from South Africa. Mathilde Sanz from France, who was, I think, second here a year or two ago. So again, just crazy depth. But it looks like according to the UTMB index score, 5 of the top 6 ranked athletes in OCC on the women's side are Americans tomorrow. So 5 of the top 6.
I love it. Come on,
Tim,
lady,
welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for making it possible. Introduce yourself quickly.
Tim Perry. I work for Camelback. Been there for 2.5 years. And yeah, I'm super stoked to be here in Chamonix. First time here. Still trying to recover from MCC a couple days ago in the rain. So limping around Chamonix over the last 48 hours. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the race and what else you have going on, because I understand you were over on the Italian side for ETC last night too.
Yeah. I mean, MCC was great. I've never done a UTMB event outside of Canyons earlier this year. So I was out there with the wizard sticks, as I learned earlier today. I did my best. A lot of aggressive hiking and trying to slide down hills in the mud. And it was just great. A lot of fantastic energy out there. And then I was at ETC yesterday, shadowing a bunch of runners, kind of bushwhacking through the trees to kind of find some different spots for coverage. And it's been great, and obviously the weather is opening up, so excited for the rest of the week.
Maybe brag about the athletes on either side of you real quick and tell us about some of the stuff Camelback's doing this.
Oh my
week.
God, I don't even know where to start with the two. I don't even think I'm I should be sitting between these two here. I mean, obviously they're just incredible athletes that have accomplished so much, and trying to compare my Stravas to their Stravas is a zero-sum game. But Sage obviously last night just coming through in 12th was absolutely incredible. We came back from Italy last night with about 10 minutes to spare and caught him coming through, and it's incredible when you have these different kind of races kind of overlapping one another. You can kind of go from one to the next, at least from a spectator standpoint. So, and then everything Sally's been doing this past year has just been super inspiring. I'm not going to talk about her crazy feet or anything like that. I think you guys talked about that. And we're just super excited to be here. I think what Sally was saying earlier about brands just being committed, coming here with their full squad, is definitely something we've embraced from a Camelback standpoint. We have so many different people here, from our president to product to marketing to others. And, we just want to build year after year and kind of, steadily help, do our part to help grow the sport. And just, I don't know, excited for the rest of the week.
So, I recall when Camelback started making trail running specific product, it had always been sort of the leader on this, and it sort of invented the hydration pack category. It was always very popular in mountain biking and hiking, even in military application and stuff. But talk about the commitment to our sport specifically, and this partnership with UTMB to help bring that to life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy story. Just quick, I mean, it started as the first product was a tube sock with an IV bag and an IV drip. Right. It was this guy that was a paramedic in Texas that wanted to do this 200-mile bike race across the state in the middle of the summer. and he just figured out kind of a solution to a core need. And so we've really kind of built upon that for run and trail run specifically, obviously bike and hike as well. But we feel like we have a place in this space. We've been in trail run for a while. This year has been a very important year for us in reemerging in some different ways, and excited to help take on this week with the event that we're doing tomorrow night. Supporting our athletes and that growing roster. We have Harry Jones and Scotty Hawker running later this week in 2 different events. So super excited about them. We're working with Ultra Block Trail Runners out of London. They did ETC yesterday. So we're, like I said, we're just slowly, steadily kind of helping to kind of grow the sport and do our part, and excited to kind of just see where the sport continues to grow.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Maybe wrapping up, tell us about the event, because it's open to the public, right?
Open to the public, 6 o'clock.
We're planning to be there.
Awesome. Yeah. Open to the public. It is right around the corner at Hotel. I'm trying to pronounce.
It's called like Foley Deuce.
Yeah. I served that up for you to spike that down. You pronounced it.
I have no problem sounding like an idiot.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. It starts at 6 o'clock. It'll run for a couple hours. We're going to do panel discussions with our Team Camelback athletes. We're also going to have Dora and Ultra Block Trail Runners there for discussions as well.
She's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. She's all about the vibes. Yeah, she's great. We're going to have open bar, some light bites, show off some future products that a lot of the crew has been testing that's coming out next year. Just kind of fun, kind of low key vibes, just to, help ease us into the rest of the week. So
sweet. Well, we'll make sure to put some information about that in the show notes and on our Instagram accounts and stuff. So those who are listening, who are here in Chamonix Valley, can swing by tomorrow night, 6 to 8 p.m. Guys, this has been so freaking fun. Super appreciate it, especially you, Sage. Thanks for coming out. Tim, thanks for the support. I think, the brand is awesome. Like, especially identifying people like Sally, Sage, Harry, Scotty, great people, great athletes. And we certainly appreciate you helping us to bring the show to life this week too. Billy, thanks for coming out.
Thanks, brother.
Sally, you're the best.
Always fun.
In closing, just want to give a quick heads up to our listeners about what we have coming up later. So our interviews that we're going to be doing later today, we're going to have David and Megan Roche in studio here. We're going to talk about like training for the race and coaching for the race, et cetera. Talk about some of their athletes probably. David Laney's going to come in this afternoon. Petter Engdahl, who's one of the favorites in the UTMB race. I'm really excited to talk to him. He's, of course, the CCC course record holder. Tomorrow's show, we're going to be joined by Katie Asmuth and Mile Backhausen. Maybe we'll add somebody else too. We'll talk about OCC as it's evolving throughout race day, and we'll preview CCC, which of course happens starting Friday morning. Before we go, also make sure you are playing fantasy all week, fantasy.freetrail.com. Pick 10 deep in OCC, CCC, UTMB. We've got great prize packages that includes a head-to-toe kit from Hoka, hat, tee, shorts, Stinson 7 trail shoes. We also have the great Zephyr packs that are going to be provided by Camelback also. So big thanks to those brands for helping us make fantasy super fun. Again, pick 10 deep, fantasy.freetrail.com. And finally, big thanks to Hoka too for helping bring this to life, supporting our good friend Sage, who rocked the Speed Goats out there yesterday. Stinson 7, also a great road to trail shoe as well. And of course, Hoka does a lot to bring UTMB to life too. So big thanks to all the partners. A big thank you to our panelists here today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you again back here again tomorrow morning. Peace out.